Hey
Why, hello,
Sam,
Meg. Hi. I like your greens.
thank you. I'm trying to match my jungle space.
Yeah, exactly. It's working.
I like your outfit too. You look like you're artsy but sophisticated.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. Little prairie Victorian. Yeah.
I like it.
Yeah, thanks.
I was noticing that when we signed on a second ago, you changed your name from George Philanthropy Group to Sam Harmon,
Mhm.
and it made me think about the story from last week that I definitely have not told you yet, which was that I was on a Zoom with a group of men, and they were saying something like, "Oh, geez, I always accidentally call Phil George because I get confused about the names." And I was like, "Oh, yeah, two first names." I had this weird moment of like trying to be so relatable, and I was like, two first names, like it happens to me all the time. And then they were all like very quiet, and then one guy was like, no one calls you George on accident. And I was like, you're absolutely right. It does not happen to me. It just happens to my husband. And now my son, Lawrence George, which either one of those can be a last name or a first name. So he's getting into it. But I'm not. So I'm gonna stop acting like I'm part of that group. It's not me.
No, it's not you. It's not you. But way to try to work that in. No,
Thank you.
I mean,
Yeah.
it's very names, I think it's so interesting. Obviously, I go by Sam most of the time, and there's, you know, certain people who have a hard time accepting that, or they must like give a little pause when I say it, and they're like, Samantha. And I'm
Yes, people want to know what your full name. Well, same
like,
for me. My name being short, people are like, "Is your name Margaret? Is it Megan?"
yeah.
I think a little mystery. We'll leave it at that with our names.
Yeah. I always just, very quickly say, yes, yes, of course, it's Samantha, but maybe I should make people guess. That'd be a little
I
bit
think
more fun.
so. Well, then that's our first nugget for today is if someone has a short name, just use your imagination. Maybe you won't know. It's a mystery.
Yeah.
I like these conversations we're having. We have committed to once a week setting aside time with one another to pose a question, a burning question that we don't get to ask when we speak otherwise every single day, because this is dedicated time to ask whatever is on our minds. And last week you asked me a question, and this week I've got a juicy one for you.
Okay, okay.
Can I ask
Go
you
ahead.
something? Okay, here we go.
Yes.
So you have talked a lot about our industry, and we've had very deep conversations in the past about philanthropy, and there's a lot of different ways to work in philanthropy. But you've said things that you feel like the industry as a whole would benefit from so much. We've had this conversation over the last 5 years, basically on and off. What is the number one thing that's missing from the philanthropy industry today?
Number one, only one thing.
If you could pick one.
Okay. 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 I have two.
Okay.
So I feel like they go hand in hand. And they're two concepts also that are just very helpful in life in general. It basically could be any industry, but they are play and ease. So,
Hey.
yeah. So, play is essential to everything. I think that early on in my fundraising career, somebody told me to, when I was doing a lot of phone calls, like leadership annual giving, making just like on the phone all day. And somebody told me, like, smile when you're on the phone and people can hear your smile. And it always stuck with me. And it does actually work. And I just like it also comes back to like just the idea if you like make yourself smile or make yourself laugh or just change your mindset around what's going on, you can, bring a little lightness, bring a little
Right.
levity. It's good for you. It's good for your colleagues. It's good for your prospects and your donors. That it doesn't, and then that everything doesn't have to be hard. And I think that's why those
Okay.
two
Okay.
things go hand in hand, because if you can like just step back and have a little fun with something, it helps you think creatively. It also just makes you get through your day, even if it's 30 seconds of play, or even, and sometimes it's tactical, like there's a thing I really don't want to do, like in a spreadsheet or write something, and I'm going to pretend that like I have 5 minutes to complete it, or else, you know,
Yeah, the world's
the
gonna.
world will end.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, so you and I view play so I mean differently. I think we've talked about this before that you'll pretend to be someone else. You were saying that last week, and I'm like, oh my gosh, my brain would never work like that. But I love humor. And when people, I think of like playfulness as people being vulnerable enough to make some jokes, like even maybe at themselves or at me. I like that kind of thing. So that makes me think of playfulness. But I think you're right. There's like this huge opportunity. I love how Esther Perel talks about play all the time. I feel like
Mm.
there's a huge opportunity for more of it.
Yeah, most definitely. I think like when I think back on being a frontline fundraiser, the one compliment I used to get a lot of the time from people was that I was refreshing. And I was like, that's all that I can imagine was maybe refreshing. I mean, not all, but like like
Yeah,
how? Like, I don't know. I think it has to do with humor and play, I think.
I love that. Okay, thanks for that. That's fun. I
How
hope
about
we can.
you? What do you think? What do you think we need?
I think we need to have more outlets to bring the conversation about philanthropy. And by conversation, I mean, what are the big problems we're trying to solve? What are the trends? What are the things that would really shock people? Like how few gifts in this country actually come from businesses or corporations, as an example, to the national stage for regular everyday people. I imagine people who are making their coffee and listening to a podcast that's interesting or watching one of those morning shows, which I am a huge fan of, saying, oh, we're going to hear this week, right? Or this month, we're going to hear about philanthropy. And I find these things so interesting because I care about whatever people care about. Like kids who are in hospitals, I care about keeping the ocean cleaner. I care about making sure homelessness isn't a problem in this country. There's so many things that people feel like organically drawn to and probably passionate about solving if it's a problem that they think about or feels personal to them. And I feel like we're having a conversation in our industry amongst one another all the time.
Hmm.
And I am so serious about bringing that to, can I say laymen? Like people who don't work in philanthropy or nonprofits and might not even be a person who stands up and says, I love learning about nonprofits or I love the philanthropy industry. I don't think people know whether they care about it or love it or don't like it at all. They don't get enough information about it. So I think we're missing like a regular, very interesting stream of information and updates and kind of calls to action, if you will, like more appropriate ways for people to jump in just that everyday news cycle. You don't have to be a not leading a nonprofit to only listen to a nonprofit podcast and learn about it. Like, what if it's just part of regular conversation?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. That makes a lot of sense. Kind of like holistically, like when
Yeah,
we think about what's on our mind and like, health and exercise and
yeah,
current affairs and like what if, right, what if service is among that? And I think people do end up figuring out ways of being of service in their communities in different ways, but really thinking about that, as it relates to finances and time.
exactly. Like, what does money look like if we're not giving some of it away? What does the world, what does the country with all of its problems look like if we're not scaling philanthropy? What does government look like if we're not working in conjunction with these huge foundations to try and scale up solving some problems? I would love to take the temperature of the American people and see if this grabs their attention, interests them, informs them, you know?
Absolutely. Yeah. Do you have those conversations? Do you start those conversations with people in your life who,
Oh,
that you like, and you're like, wait a minute, like, I am very clear about what causes that I give to in my family, and this is how we do it. And you might know this person, and you're like, oh, like, I know you care about stuff, and I know you have means to support them. Like, how do you
yeah.
start those conversations with people?
Oh, totally. I was just having this conversation with Phil, my husband, because we love going to the Quantum House. Like one of our family's passions is food because Phil and his family love food. So now my kids love food and feeding people. And we go to this Quantum House in West Palm Beach. We just emailed them, found another date, and I was like, oh my gosh, my friend Jess, who's super philanthropic, she just spoke on the committee, a campaign committee panel, I think that they had at Yale. She's an alum there. I'm like, I have to text her and tell her we're going to the Quantum House so that she and her husband can bring her kids. And they all are. And she was like, I'm so glad you texted me. I had just emailed them for a tour to understand how I could do it. And I feel like sometimes there's people who aren't as sophisticated at philanthropy as she is. And so I also find ways to say, like, I have to show you pictures from the other night. Seriously, you probably didn't realize this. There's like sometimes upwards of 80 people staying at the house waiting for a limb surgery in West Palm Beach because people fly from all over the world for this one doctor. Even just that, or like saying to people, I was saying to my mom, because we went to see a show at the Kravis Center in West Palm Beach, and the name of the person who was like sponsoring the show we saw, I'm like, oh my gosh, she's my friend. She is going to be the campaign chair for this other campaign that I'm working on. And my mom was like, oh my gosh, she's so generous. I'm like, I know, I have to tell you about her. So I feel like stories. I like
Yeah.
showing people, like if you're just driving by a library and like, it's free to take a book out, and this is how. I very much like exposing people through ways that they can relate to. I'm bringing it full circle back to relatability today.
Yeah, no, absolutely. No, that's, just not thinking it's always someone else's job because,
Yeah.
you can really you can do
Yes,
it.
that's
You can do
true.
it. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. Well, I love these little chats we have. And as always, bring the heat next week with a question, but I hope I see you 100 times before then.
I think that we will. And, I'm really sorry if my productivity goes down this week for the firm because I'm going to be spending so much time figuring out what to ask you next week. Sorry,
Okay,
Meg.
good.
Really
Worth it.
important though. Yeah, totally.
All right. I'll see you then.
Right. See ya.
Thank you. Yeah.